Welcome to A Canadian Investing in the U.S., a podcast and YouTube channel focused on Canadians buying real estate with host Glenn Sutherland.
Welcome to another episode of A Canadian Investing in the U.S. This week my guest is Andriy Makoviychuk.
Very close.
That's close. Andriy, give us an intro to yourself and pronounce your name correctly for everybody.
Sure, no problem. So, hi guys, my name is Andriy Makoviychuk. I've been investing since 2012 in Ontario. I'm 26 years old, and roughly about last year we started to go down into the States. How it started in 2012 is I was in college. And I guess my light bulb moment was when a buddy invited me over to his house, and he was paying about $600 a room at the time. And I just remember looking at the place, and it was a complete disaster. I mean, student housing, your typical horror story of student housing, that's where he was living. Like, he wouldn't leave his room because it was so gross unless it was to leave the house. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, 2012, the prices were much different in Barrie than they are now. I'm thinking, okay, this guy must have paid like $200,000 for this home, and he's taking in $3,500 a month. This is crazy, because he had bedrooms all over the place. The main floor had 2 bedrooms, the basement had 3 bedrooms, and upstairs had 3 bedrooms. So he was making a killing, and then I said, you know what, we're doing something wrong here. I said, we gotta try something. So that happened to be the time that OSAP was dishing out money, and I don't know why, but they ended up giving me about $22,000. Meanwhile, telling you my tuition is like $1,500 a semester, so there was no help needed there. But they gave me like $22,000. So I thought, okay, either I go to Casino Rama and do something stupid, or maybe let's try to do something smart. So I partnered up with my parents for the first home. And we didn't know nothing. I mean, really nothing. We bought a 3-bedroom, 1-washroom home. It was barely 1,000 square feet. The agent at the time told us that it was good, and we believed them. We didn't know anything. So, okay, we bought it. It turns out it probably could have got a lot better home. Let's just put it that way. We rented it to a family. We didn't rent it to students because that time we were not experienced. Yeah. And I didn't want the same asshole to be there. Maybe I would have dealt with it, but I know my parents, they probably would have killed me if I put students like that in there. So, but long story short, we sold that property in 2016 for about 400 and some odd thousand.
Nice.
In 4 years' time. So I think that the message here to whoever, it honestly doesn't matter. I think with the test of time, obviously it helps. We're living in Ontario, one of the fastest appreciating markets, but I think it doesn't really matter as long as you do something. So then from there on in, I started looking. I was working at a job for produce, and I loved the job. We were selling produce Canada-wide. And then a buddy of mine, not a buddy, he was a customer of mine actually, he just started talking to me about real estate, and we started talking over and over. And I had this hunch, because we had this one property, so I was talking about this property to him. And he said, you know what, like, what are you doing with one? Just keep on going. So then he started talking to me about cash flow, and then I kind of found bigger pockets, and I was lost. For about 2 years, I was just in bigger pockets, consuming as much as I possibly could consume. Yeah. Until then I started looking all over the place, in Ontario, where is the highest cash flowing market that I could possibly get within reasonable driving distance. So we picked Welland. Also, maybe not the best choice, but it was very high cash flowing. The property is very old, and also it appreciated. Even though it's old and crappy, we paid only about $210, I think. I think it's worth around $350 now, which is great. And the cash flow is pretty good. It's about $600 or $700 a month we make clean, which is not too bad, but it is an old property. I'm not going to lie. Yeah. And then during this time in Welland, I was looking in the States. And I was looking so intensively. I think 2017 was when I really started looking. And I took a drive down to Niagara Falls. I actually almost bought a place. They were asking, it was a single-family small home in Niagara Falls for $10,000.
So this is the other side, Niagara Falls, New York, right?
Yes, Niagara Falls, New York. Yeah.
Okay.
They were asking $10,000, and I don't know if I was stupid or scared or what. I ended up think I offered them 5 or something stupid like that. And they said, go, buddy, take a hike. And I did. I left. So I kept on looking, didn't make any decisions until in 2019. I saw a house in Jamestown, New York. The agent advertised it right on the listing there where he will accept owner finance. So I thought, okay, this is great. I mean, I don't have, first of all, I didn't even want to put all the money that I had into it. He wanted $42,000. And then we ended up negotiating at $8,400 down, which is 20%.
Yeah.
And 5-year payoff at 6% interest, which I know some Canadians listening to this saying 6% interest. This is crazy. How are you paying this kind of? I mean, we're paying here 2% kind of thing. But I assure people that 6% when you're talking about these low numbers of borrowing, it makes no difference. 6% or 2% or 10%, it's all the same.
I think you're preaching to the choir. I think a lot of people listen to the show have listened to other shows and they know that we're paying higher rates, but we're also paying way less property taxes, way less insurance. Repairs are cheaper. There's lots of other advantages, but the interest rate is not the advantage over.
No. Especially, I mean, we're Canadian. So I think the only reason I even got that property, the first one, is the agent was he was an ex-FBI, retired FBI agent, and then he turned to real estate to sell homes. He was in the FBI for about 25 years. So this guy, when I'm telling you, as straight as an arrow, there was no lefts or rights with him. Like, he wanted to see everything. So I showed him all my paperwork, my Canadian tax returns. I don't even know if he knew what he was looking at. But I showed him those. I showed him bank accounts, showed him state, everything he wanted to see, I showed him. And I think other people in Jamestown were, I don't know if they weren't qualified, but I was basically competing against other agents. And he wanted $44,000. I offered him $40,000 with all my paperwork. Yeah. He said 42. I didn't care. I said, yeah, sure. If he went back to 44, I would have taken it anyways.
Yeah.
I really didn't care because
it's too grand.
Talking, right. Who cares?
Yeah.
And that one, I don't know if I got lucky with that property, but it is my favorite one by far. The person upstairs is still living there. I raised his rent significantly. He didn't move out. I think he was paying the property. To put in perspective, the property was only making $300 a month. The first floor unit was empty, and it was a 2-bedroom. And upstairs, the guy was paying $300 for a 2-bedroom, which in Jamestown, it should be $600 for a 2-bedroom, and like $500 1-bedroom, $600 2-bedroom, $700 3-bedroom, and so on and so forth.
One thing we don't touch on a lot. Sorry to cut you off. One thing we don't touch on a lot is that a lot of states, and sometimes it's county specific, but they don't have like limits on what you can raise the rent. It's usually you just have to give them a specific amount of time if you're going to raise the rent a certain amount, right? Like I know certain states you can only do it on lease renewals because they're contract states. Since you have a contract, so you can only do it at the end of the contract, but you can do whatever you want, and then they can decide to go or not instead of 30 or 60 days. Some states you can just do it. They can move in, and a month later you can decide to double the rent, and they can decide to stay or leave. And it's one thing that for Ontario investors that they are so used to the landlord-tenant board dictating what you can push and sometimes it's there's a reason to move it. You're not trying to be a jerk. Sometimes Amazon moved in and their places are worth more.
You can't survive any other way.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, could continue.
No, that's okay. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up because that was my first. If you backtrack this, I started in 2017 to look, but I didn't buy till 2019. Mostly because I was scared, and mostly I was reading way too much about taxes, about everything, and then there's always a conflict of opinion from people, and I think if you read too much, you really become an analysis paralysis, and you just stop yourself from doing anything. And that's where I was for 2 years, reading, not doing anything about it. Part of my reading was landlord and tenant rules in New York State. Now, although they're a Democrat state, I think compared to Ontario, they're very favorable to landlords. Just recently, they tightened the restrictions a little bit, but really it doesn't do us any bad or good. It's still the same thing. So to go back to your question,
since you mentioned New York, I'm going to cut you off one more time. Though whenever I was researching New York, it's one of those unique states compared to the entire rest of the United States. And a lot of their landlord laws are county specific instead of state specific, because it is a large state.
100%.
So look at county laws. Don't look at like New York laws, because a lot of times they're going to dictate New York City laws, as if you're Googling it. And New York City laws are not favorable. Some counties aren't favorable. At all. And some counties are very favorable. So it just be specific when you're doing your research for New York. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, so, no, good thing you said that. Actually, I got a call. I posted a reply on a comment on Bigger Pockets just a few days ago. Sure enough, somebody called me from New York City. And I said, oh, hello. So, yeah. So he just wanted to kind of, shoot the shit, if you will, about investing in general. So he calls me up and says, oh, yeah, I'm buying in Pennsylvania because the New York laws are so terrible for landlords. I said, I don't know where you're coming from this. Do you live in New York City? Is that why you're thinking it? So he's like, yeah, I'm from Brooklyn. I said, okay, well, that's a different story. Yeah. Just like you mentioned, New York City is completely like, oh, I don't know how they make money there. You can't cash flow. First of all, the prices. Secondly, if somebody's paying, I don't know, $2,000 a month, good luck trying to raise it on them.
Appreciation.
That's not going to happen.
That's how you make your money in New York City.
Yeah, appreciation. You're right.
Yeah.
So anyways, so this person was paying only $300 a month, but he was there for a long time. Usually what happens in these small towns, and I'm sure you're familiar with this too, somebody's been living there for a long time, nobody's writing new leases. I mean, I know for myself, unless somebody asks, usually I don't write new leases for a year's term because, there's no point. I make them happy, they make me happy, kind of go on from there. And really and truly, if somebody's unhappy living there, I don't want a lease to lock them up in because I don't want them to do something terrible to the property. And it's not that hard to find a tenant over there. If I put up something, I'll get 50 calls, not kidding, 50 calls at least. And out of those 50, 1 or 2 people will be really good that I want to, continue with them.
Yep.
So and the new laws in New York State was I think it's 30 days if you live there for a year, 60 days notice if it's 1 year to 3 years. Anything over 3 years, you have to give them 90 days notice. As a personal rule of thumb for myself, I always give people at least 60 days notice. I don't care how long they've lived there because I want them to consciously think about this and really think, do I want to stay here at this new price or should I go somewhere else? Because I don't want to force the price on them and then I have to spend 2 months in court trying to get them out because they can't pay the rent. Nobody's winning in this situation. You might as well wait that 60 days and you look like a nice guy because you're trying to help them. But, trying to explain to them, listen, what I paid for these properties is not what the owner paid for the properties years ago. There's no way I can afford to hold them at this kind of amount of money. So we have to do something about this. And most of the time, I'm never raising over the market rent. Always, no. I've never raised them more than $600 for a 2-bedroom or $700 for a 3-bedroom. These people were there, for example, for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. They've been paying their $375 for a 2-bedroom forever, and nobody's lifted. Nobody's raised it, and you can't survive on these kind of numbers, especially if something goes wrong. No. So that's kind of how So 2019 was the first one, and then I started digging down a little bit more, and I actually called an agent in Jamestown as well on a different property. And this guy I didn't know at the time, but he's probably the highest producing agent in all of Jamestown, and probably Chautauqua County as a general. He's an outstanding guy. He's also 26 years old, but just outstanding. So I called him up. I said, listen, I'm interested in your building. He had a 21-unit apartment building for sale. I'm interested in your building. I want to buy it. Let me see if we can set up a time. Yeah. So he takes me there. He says, you know what? While we're here, I'll show you some other stuff. So it turns out I didn't buy the building. The building had way too much work for me personally. Maybe if I was more capitalized, I would have done it. Yep. But he showed me a portfolio sale of 5 homes and 12 units. So it was a triplex, 3 duplexes, and a single family. And he said, listen, maybe he can take an owner finance deal because I don't think he wants to pay the taxes on such a large sale at the same time. But you're going to have to take them all. And really, I actually wanted to take them all anyway, so it wasn't any problem for me. Yeah. So we ended up negotiating for everything. I think it was $210,000 for 5 homes, 12 units, which was also 5-year payoff. I think that's kind of my niche now, is trying to get any property on a 5-year payoff, because I kind of want to build a system, I think, of 5 or 6 homes For example, in 2020, I have 5 or 6 homes that are on a 5-year payoff. 2021, 5 or 6 homes on a 5-year payoff. And 5 years from now, I can refinance every single year, different portfolios, and kind of pull out that money because I'll be paying off another one in 5 years, another one next year, another one next year, kind of thing. That's what I've been thinking. Now, of course, if a deal comes up that's too good to be true, you have to take it.
Oh, yeah.
I had, like for my own stuff in Jamestown, we had one person that called, this lady was the first one I put in the first duplex I bought. And she's been honestly outstanding. Yep. So she calls me up. Anytime she had to be late in the last year or so, she would call me at least a week in advance saying, hey, listen, my check's going to come on this day. Is it okay if I pay you, 3 days after? Okay, no problem, no problem or whatever. Usually I work with them. If they call me in advance, it means they're responsible. They're trying to, they're not trying to hide or whatever.
Totally.
So I was pretty happy with her throughout this time. So she calls me up and says, listen, we're getting laid off. And I don't think that she was on the phone with the New York, unemployment services. It's not as easy as here. Here I hear people apply for the CARB within 3 days, boom, you have your money. Yep. Over there, you have to wait about 6 hours on the phone before somebody actually answers you. And then maybe you're missing one paperwork, then tomorrow you got to call again, wait 6 hours, and then you're missing something else, then you got to, it's a long pain in the butt process. But she called me up and said, listen, I don't think I can make it this month. Next month, I'm going back to work. I can pay. So I said, okay, what are we going to do about this month for the future? I said, I have an idea, but you tell me what you're thinking. She said, no, you tell me your idea. I said, okay.
Yeah.
So I said, for May, pay me in full, obviously, and then start in June, extra $100 until your money's paid back for April. She said, okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And that was it. And another guy called me, said, instead of $500, he can pay $400 and he'll pay me back the $100 in June as well. I said, okay, fine, great. That was the only problems I had, but I think I'm fairly lucky because most of my people are Section 8 DSS on some sort of program, so they're really not in a position to lose that. So they pay no matter what. And plus they're on Social Security, so nothing really happened. Actually, they get more money during this time because the Fed announces, so they're more richer than they would be. But other than that, I don't think I'm having any problems. I think I don't know if you listened, Glenn, but the Bigger Pockets, they had a live with different people coming on. I think it was Brandon Turner and Daily Green, and they brought up different guests. There was about 5 or 6 guests in one show. It was all a live show.
Okay.
But one person came up there. His name was Justin Stamper. I don't know if you know him. He has a show, I think it's at HGTV, called Zombie House Flippers. He's out of...
okay, yeah. I've seen the commercial.
Yeah, okay. So he's out of Florida. And just the most down-to-earth guy. I actually messaged him on Facebook, and he actually replied saying, yeah, buddy, whenever you want to come down, we'll go for a coffee or whatever. So his important take throughout this whole thing is when this is all over, I don't want to be known as the guy that didn't pay his bills, because they're talking a lot about mortgage deferrals and don't pay because the landlord or the mortgage company can't foreclose on you and blah, blah. He says, I want to be known as the guy that paid his bills on time, because when this is all over, believe me, those people will remember that. They're going to remember that you paid on time versus the guy that screwed them for $1,000 or whatever it is. And I think that goes likewise with some of these tenants that call me. When they were good to me for all these years, I'm not going to be in the asshole that during this time is going to say, you know what, no, screw you, get out. I'm not, especially if we work out a plan, I'm willing to work with anybody. But, it's only those people that don't answer their call or trying to dodge on purpose or whatever. That's the people that, nobody's friends with.
I totally agree with you on this. When the first thing came out and the mortgage deferral thing, I ran to the banks and figured out what was going on. But then I'm like, wait, what am I doing? I don't even know if I need this yet. But it's the panic reaction. And then I'm like, okay, let's just settle. And then I'm like, you know what? People are still paying. And I'm like, even if there's a couple that aren't, I have a large enough portfolio that doesn't even matter. And I continued paying. I'm like, I don't want to take on these deferral programs unless there's a reason to use it, because I read that it will affect your credit. And there's a lot of things that I'm like, I went and had conversations with my lenders, and especially private lenders, and what happens, let's have that worst case scenario, but told them, no, I still have several months of reserves, But let's just have the conversation proactively. What's going to happen? But I haven't taken anyone up on any of our possible things. I don't want to do that. I want to be the guy that makes the payments unless there's a reason I can't make the payments.
Right. And that's like here in Canada, there's two, one duplex I have in Welland. So far, obviously, those people are also on programs. I think the guy is retired in the back, and the lady collects a disability check. So they're paying no matter what. But I was thinking to myself, what if they stop paying? What if? I think maybe in that case scenario, I would go to Scotiabank and say, hey, listen, X, Y, and Z. But if they're paying, I mean, the payment doesn't go away. It's still going to be there. So it's not like you don't owe that money. It's not like 6 months. Oh yeah, 6 months freebie. We're going to pay for you. No, nobody's paying for you. You still have to owe the money after. So if you have the money now, you might as well pay it. Otherwise, because apparently with Scotiabank, the way they do it is the interest keeps on accruing throughout the whole time.
Yeah. So what you're allowing the bank to do if you take the deferral program is you're allowing them to charge interest on interest.
Right.
Because you're tacking interest onto your mortgage, and then they're charging interest on the interest. You're literally, the banks are not hard on that. Like, it's not hurting them. You're giving them the opportunity to double charge you.
Yeah. So that's why I'm like, you know what? Like, obviously, we looked into. My dad called me right away, said, "Hey, listen, should we do this? Should we do this?" I said, "Listen, you're working. I'm working. Everybody's working. Pay your bills."
Yep. Because
it's not going to be in the favor of and then next time you go to Scotiabank and you're going to ask, hey, listen, I want a mortgage or whatever. You're going to say, oh, you're the guy that wanted deferral. You want a mortgage now? You want more lending? Like, come on. Yep. And this is main companies I'm talking. Now imagine your private lender. He can put whatever rules he wants to put. So he can say, okay, no problem. You're going to defer for 3 months, and then at the end of the 3 months, you owe me all the money at once. Then what?
Yeah. So I have a whole thing about private lenders. When you borrow money from a private lender, you pay the private lender because they're your lifeblood. No matter what, you use a credit
100%.
card to pay them, and you don't tell a private lender if you had problems because that's not their problem. They just you want to make this easy, and if you have to take money from a different account to pay them or a credit card advance, you make sure you pay your private lenders because they're going to be the ones you need later. There'll be something that comes across.
100%.
You make those payments first over everybody.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And you know what? Like, Scotiabank is not going to call, or Bank of America is not going to call some other bank and say, hey, you know what Joe did? He didn't pay me for X, Y, and Z. But I can guarantee you the private lending network is very small. They all know each other, and they're gonna blast your name like you've never been blasted before, for sure. You don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be on the other end of the stick that nobody wants to lend you money.
Nope.
You want to be the guy that pays his bills on time. That's kind of like both of my guys are obviously owner finance, so they're all private. I mean, I never called them. They have my checks, and that's that. I never touch on it, and I never will call them because everybody's paying, everybody's doing good.
Let's talk COVID. Is seller financing a good idea during COVID? Are you still buying during COVID?
I got proposed to buy a 10-unit, 7-unit in Jamestown by the same realtor. And the only reason I'm on the fence about it, and I'm not really on the fence, the building makes money left, right, and center, no matter what. What I'm scared about is what I would be scared about. For example, if I'm doing a regular 5-year payoff like I've been doing, obviously the payments are very high. Like my mortgage payment for 6 houses put together is about $3,400 a month.
Oh, so you're doing a 10-year term or 5-year term, right?
5-year term.
Oh, okay. I was expecting a balloon at the end. Okay, I understand.
No. I hate balloons. No balloon whatsoever. I'm paying off everything in 5 years.
All right, I understand.
So my payment is very high during this time, which I'm okay with because normally the rents come in, normally everything works out, and I'm still making cash flow during this time, so I'm perfectly fine with it. Yeah. But taking on a new building during this time on these terms, I would be a little bit worried, only because I haven't built that relationship with these tenants, so I don't know. And first of all, a lease is beautiful. A lease is going to show you, this guy's paying $700 a month. You don't know if he's actually paying anything. So I think the extra precautions I would take on this building, and that's what we're trying to negotiate right now, is first of all, start off at a 10-year mark, 10-year payoff. After 1 year, we switch it to a 5 or 4 year, or whatever it is. So after the first first year, very low payments. And after that 1 year, I mean, of course, this problem is going to go away. We'll switch it to a 4 or 5 year after that. And I want assurance from the landlord or the current owner that whoever he says is paying whatever number is actually paying that number. So whether that's through bank statements to show me, or I don't know how he wants to assure me, but I want that assurance.
Yeah, I would say
because I don't want to be stuck with 7 units that nobody's paying, and I can't do anything about it.
If it's a self-managed, I would want bank statements, or if it's property management, I might settle for property management or want both. But yeah, you want
self-managed.
Yeah, so you want bank statements. Then you want to see that they're actually paying, because
right. You know, normally, even though I should care, normally I don't care because I can survive 3-4 months. It doesn't matter. In that time, I can probably turn around the building very quickly. If it was something larger, then it wouldn't matter whether COVID or no COVID. I would have to get those statements no matter what, because you can't swallow those kind of payments on a very large building. Yeah. But especially during this time, I want that reassurance that the tenants are still paying whatever program they're on. I want to see if the program is still active, if they're still going to switch it for me, or if they're still getting their government funding as they should be. Because every one of these contracts, especially Section 8 or Department of Social Services, you sign their contract and then you have your own lease. But if you read their contract specifically, it says at any time when the government stops funding us, we'll stop funding you. Obviously, because they're not getting any money. So why would they be giving you any money?
Yep.
So you want to read those contracts. You want to call them up and say, hey, listen, are you still – I mean, of course, I don't think that they're going to shut down Section 8. They're not going to shut down disability, especially during this time. They're probably going to ramp it up, if anything. But you want to make sure. Because there's some smaller programs, like in Jamestown, for example, there's a program called STEL. So STEL is for mental health people. And they'll pay a lot of the months. They'll pay the same thing. They pay like 70%, then the tenant will pay about 30% of the rent. Great program. I've worked with them before. Very good. But they're a very small program, so you don't know if they're still alive during this time. So if I had all my people on STEL, which is another concern anyways, but if you had all your people on STEL, then you would have to call them and make sure, hey, listen, are you guys still open or what's going on?
Right.
That's kind of...
And another thing to think about, too, is you mentioned making deals with your tenants, right? So is there deals... if there's a multi-unit, like, has he worked out a bunch of deals for payment plans? Has he signed anything? Is there a paper trail? Is there something laid out that those will continue on to you? Because as soon as the owner changes, they might be like, hey, I don't have to pay back that $100 a month anymore.
Right.
To get caught up. Yeah.
You know, I think for us as a new owner, it wouldn't really matter. I think it more matters for the owner selling. Because if he didn't pay something in the past, but now they're on the right track, but he still owes the old owner money, I mean, that's really not my responsibility in the day. But I think also another thing with these owner finance, if we're talking about this, what I'm going to start doing is having the mortgage payments come out on the 15th.
Oh,
instead of because it's getting a little ridiculous.
Yeah, I started doing that too, because you don't get the money. You don't get the money necessarily by that time, the payments, so you have to have a full month or several months of reserve sitting there. I've done the same thing. I've kind of mixed it up. I have about half of them coming out at the 1st and half of them coming out on the 15th. Because if you're doing a note servicing company, usually there is no it's considered on time if it's by the 15th. And so you just set up your things so that they come out on those dates.
Yeah, but that I'll have to do because, like I said, the mortgage payments are very high.
Yeah.
Not that I don't get the rent. I get the rent no matter what. Just the payments are extremely high. So, I have an operating line that I use for about $8,000. Now, obviously, I don't have $8,000 in mortgages, so it works out great. Whatever it is, the checks come out of there, and I just pay off the line as the rent comes in, and then we're back to zero on the other month. Yeah. But if it was any more than that, then I wouldn't be comfortable with putting it out there because something like Section 8 sends their check in the mail on the 3rd. It could be the 5th or 6th before it actually arrives.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of my tenants are like that, right? Or some of them will say, "Oh, it's a Saturday, but I'm gonna take it out on. I'll pay you on Monday when I get the check." Okay, fine. But the guy who's pulling the mortgage doesn't care if it's Sunday or what. He's pulling the mortgage no matter what. holiday or doesn't matter to him. So that's the only thing I would change. Other than that, I'm so far very, very happy with the way things are going, and probably want to continue. But I think I would want to continue, maybe either continue in Jamestown or maybe like you did it in Ohio. But I think being a Republican state, I think it's a lot more landlord friendly towards.
Yeah, it can be. If people want to get a hold of you, Andriy, what's the best way to do so?
Maybe we can put it in the show notes. I'll put out my email. I'll give it to you.
That sounds
you can
perfect.
Put it up there.
Yeah.
It's up there already?
No,
email. You
send
can
it
call me
over.
up anytime.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah, no, send it over. I'll put it in.
Okay, yeah. Email or call me anytime. I mean, my Facebook and Instagram is basically my name, so you'll find me there. Yeah, I love to chat to anybody that calls. Like the guy I told you calling from New York City, we spent about 2 hours on the phone, just shooting the shit. I love to talk to anybody about this. I could talk all day about this, but we have to head out.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Andriy. I really appreciate it.
All right, Glenn. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Cool. I'll go there. No, that's great. And yeah, no, I think like right now too, with the seller financing, because a lot of times with these cheaper houses, it's a lot of private lending and hard money, and a lot of that's dried up right now. And I think that there's going to be a lot more opportunity for seller financing.
Yeah.
Compared to the past. I think people know there's people already knew about it, but I think people are going to be more open to it just because they want to sell, right? And if they want to, or if they really need to sell, like they have less options, and it puts them ahead of a lot of people. And I think there's going to be a lot more of those deals showing up.